Choosing a lightsaber hilt that's the appropriate size for your needs can be a very important part of the lightsaber selection process. So let's kind of go over what some things to look for as you're selecting a certain lightsaber hilt size. And in this video, we'll primarily cover two specifications. So we'll cover the length of the lightsaber hilt and the diameter of the lightsaber hilt. And you'll notice that both the longer and wider hilts are on the left, and then the shorter and smaller diameter hilts are on the right. I'll introduce these hilts real fast. This is a Savi's Workshop lightsaber. It's from Disney Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, the park, and it's a power and control style hilt. Next to that is an Ultra Saber's Guardian, Ultra Saber's Manticore. This is a Corbanth DM1, Ultra Saber's Aeon LE-V2. Solos hold Corran Horn. I think it's a V2. And then finally an Ultra Saber's Dark Initiate V2. So let's talk about diameter of hilts first. Now, generally speaking, people with smaller hands, so like women and children, are a little more comfortable with smaller diameter hilts. So like the ones over here are all a bit smaller in diameter. It's just a little more manageable to hold and to wield. And another nice thing about smaller diameter hilts is they're just generally more maneuverable. So if somebody's getting into lightsaber spinning, for example, they may want to look for kind of more maneuverable hilts like that. And with dueling too, sometimes it's preferable to have a smaller diameter hilt, again, for the maneuverability. But it does depend on what you're looking for. Now, with wider diameter hilts, those can be a little bit more appropriate for people with larger hands. And I know several viewers have commented in the past that they like some of the larger Ultra Saber's hilts because they have larger hands, so it kind of fits that person better. I know sometimes people will kind of critique larger hilts and they'll just say, oh, they're large and clunky and whatever, but I think it just depends on what you're looking for, and they are a good fit for people with larger hands, or just if that's what they're looking for. The other thing about larger hilts is they're kind of more imposing. So on the one hand, you can say they're more clunky. On the other hand, you can say they're more imposing. And Kylo Ren style hilts, for example, are a prime example of that. Most of those are quite large in diameter, and they're supposed to be. So the Kylo Ren lightsaber is sort of a broadsword style lightsaber, right? So it's meant to be like a big kind of unwieldy, heavy sword type of thing. And that's kind of what it's going for versus being a light and maneuverable lightsaber. So anyway, there's definitely time and a place to have a larger lightsaber hilt. So I think it's a bit of an oversimplification when somebody says, I don't like any of the large lightsaber hilts. Well, maybe it's just not appropriate for you or for what you're looking for. Okay, now let's talk about the length of the lightsaber hilt. So generally, if you want to have a two-handed lightsaber hilt, you need to have a longer hilt. That should be obvious, because if you have one of these shorter hilts, unless you have very tiny hands, these shorter hilts are really more of a one-handed lightsaber hilt or an offhand lightsaber hilt. So an offhand lightsaber is just you have your main lightsaber in your other hand, and so your second hand will have kind of this one-handed lighter type of hilt. So these shorter hilts are definitely more of a one-handed or offhand lightsaber. And longer hilts are more if you want to get that kind of classic two-handed, lightsaber pose. And you can just have the option of that. And well, another thing though about the hilt length is you want to consider if you're going to be creating a pike or a staff out of the hilts. So some hilts you're able to add kind of an extension piece so you can create this longer pike to it. Other hilts you're able to use a coupler to combine two of them to create kind of a Darth Maul style saber staff, a double-bladed lightsaber. And in those cases, sometimes it's nicer to have kind of two shorter hilts combined, because if you have a super long hilt and you combine it with another super long hilt, that's quite, a staff in the middle. And then you combine it with the blades too, it could become kind of too long and unwieldy for some people. So yeah, that's definitely something to look at as well if you're considering the length of the hilt, because some of the longer hilts can be a bit unwieldy if you turn them into a saber staff. So one final thought, I guess, is that sometimes the kind of wider diameter and longer hilts, there's a bit of a correlation, not always, but there can be a correlation with the weight of the hilt. And so I know that can also make them a little more unwieldy for people, but again, that can also make them more imposing. Generally speaking, kind of the shorter hilts with the smaller diameter, generally those will be a bit lighter. But again, that's a correlation, not a causation, because it really depends on the material that the hilt is made out of as well. What do you think about the sizing of lightsaber hilts? How often do you consider the sizing of the lightsaber hilts? Because a fair point is, a lot of lightsabers, people will look for the design. It'll be kind of a character-inspired hilt that they like, and so they almost have a binary option. You either buy it or you don't. But on the other hand, you can have different custom saber companies sell, like, say, a Darth Maul style lightsaber hilt like this. This is the Corbanth one. Plenty of other companies make a similar kind of Darth Maul style hilt, and the size of the hilts can vary. So sometimes you can shop around a little with that too. But at any rate, that's just kind of a quick summary of a few things to look for when you're selecting a lightsaber hilt size. Feel free to comment below.